Washington mornings on the Mall.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
8:07 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson with you. So Todd Akin was on Good Morning America and the Today Show this morning. There's some new news about what's going on. He has confirmed that Paul Ryan did in fact call him and personally plea for him to step aside. Akin still says it's not right for the, quote, party bosses to override the voters of Missouri, although he did apparently say that he is thinking everything over.
Well, there you go.
But he also says he's not abandoning the race, and I'm planning to win it. So the plot thickens as it goes with Todd Akin. Steve Forbes joins us now, chairman and editor of Forbes Media, former GOP presidential candidate. He's got a new book out called Freedom Manifesto, Why Free Markets and are Moral and Big Government Isn't. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Brian. How are you?
We're doing well. I want to get to your book in a second, I promise, but you know politics very well. This whole Todd Akin mess, is it taking the Republicans off message, which is, of course, what they want to do is concentrate on the economy?
It has, but I think after Labor Day, when the two conventions are out of the way, we'll be back on the big issues, and this will be but a distant memory.
So it doesn't worry you at all?
No, I think you got it earlier with Todd Akin. As a matter of pride, he made a statement that torpedoed his candidacy. He said he was the choice of the voters. If he'd made that statement before the primary, he would not have won that primary. So he will have his face-saving time, and then I think he will eventually withdraw.
So you think this is all about saving face and that he'll do the right thing ultimately?
Yeah, he's 65 years old. He sees his career going up in flames, and he's numb. And so, let the guy mull it over for a few days. But I think at the end of the time, he'll realize that the things he believes in will be best served if he steps aside.
Well, you got this new book out called Freedom Manifesto, Why Free Markets Are Moral and Big Government Isn't. This is something that I think, it's a message I think that needs to be put out there. And it sort of comes at a time when, the president has said that, hey, if you built a business, you didn't do that alone. You had some help along the way. What did you think? Is the timing, I guess, couldn't be better given what the president has said?
Yes. I think that's one statement he wished he hadn't made. It revealed his mindset, and this underscores about what this election's about, two competing visions, whether we're going to have an economy based on big government, a country based on big government, or freedom and free markets. And government's always portrayed itself as occupying the high moral ground, may not be very efficient, but it is caring. It does help, is compassionate. It's about fairness. We make the point in this book, where I co-authored with Elizabeth Ames, that it's just the opposite. That big government is about greed. Big government is about short-term thinking. Big government is about favoritism and paybacks and political constituencies, while free markets, you only succeed by meeting the needs and wants of other people.
What happens to the poor? What happens to poverty when you go with a free market system, with a true free market system?
You have more jobs and less poverty, and that's the history of free markets. They create opportunity. Entrepreneurs go out there. Their success means other people's success. Steve Jobs got rich doing what he did, but he created millions of new jobs, enriched the standard of living, made life easier for literally hundreds of millions of people around the world. And government talks that talk, but in the reality, government is about paying off political constituencies. You take education, where you don't have real free markets. We have a crisis at K through 12. Unions, they're more interested in their own well-being than in the well-being of kids. Whereas when you have choice, you make the decision of what's best for you, not bureaucrats or politicians paying off constituencies.
Well, the president, when he has these unguarded moments, says things that suggest he believes in spreading the wealth around. What do you say to that?
Well, he wants to spread wealth by taking it from those who create wealth and ends up making us all poorer. Just look at the contrast, vivid contrast to be sure, between North Korea and South Korea. Free markets about creating wealth. And the nice thing is that everyone moves ahead. Just look at the history of this country. People come here, start off poor, they move up. And even in the 90s to the economic crisis, if you started off at the bottom, what they call quintile, within a decade you move up. Not only is your pay higher, but you're moving up proportionately to others. That's a wonderful thing about this country. It's not either or. It's not zero sum. everyone can move ahead. The tide can rise, and we've got to get that back again.
And we're talking with Steve Forbes, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of the Forbes Media empire, also former GOP presidential candidate. He's got a new book out called Freedom Manifesto. All right, so you know money, you know finance pretty well. What would you do to get us out of our economic woes right now and get America back working?
Yeah, I'd send the Federal Reserve off to a vacation maybe in North Korea.
Really?
Well, stop trashing the integrity of the U.S. dollar. Well, for example, 10 years ago, the Fed started to go on a money printing binge. You never would have had the housing crisis if the Fed hadn't printed so much money, and nobody's pinned that on them. We all know the role of Fannie and Freddie and other government institutions in this crisis. So have a stable dollar. It's like 60 minutes in an hour just makes life a lot easier. Reform the tax code. We all know what an abomination that is. Huge source of power. Junk it. Put in simplification. Paul Ryan, before he went on the ticket, had a plan for 2 rates, 10%, 25%. I had one rate plan, flat tax. But simplify the code so people can focus on real things instead of lobbying in Washington for tax favors. Get rid of Obamacare and get a patient-centered health care system. Why don't we have more free markets in health care with more sensible safety nets? We do it in food. You know, if a government ran agriculture, we would have no more obesity. We'd all be starving. And instead, you allow agriculture to produce the food, private companies process the food, markets sell the food, and if people have problems, you have everything from food banks to food stamps to deal with it. Let's do that in health care, and you'd see this country come back very quickly. Free markets is about freedom. And when you have freedom with sensible rules of the road, this country prospers because people from the most unlikely backgrounds come forward and do things that people just didn't know they needed, like what Steve Jobs and Henry Ford and others have done.
As you look at the lay of the land right now economically, are you bullish or are you bearish?
Well, bearish if this government continues to go on the course that it's going, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the American people know that we have a stark choice between freedom and big government, and I think they're going to vote for freedom.
Well,
so I think we're moving in the right direction.
I asked this question because I saw a story this morning as I was getting ready for the program that said that the likelihood of a double-dip recession has gone up from 20 to 25%.
Well, if you continue to with these present policies, yes, we could get a double dip, especially with the crisis in Europe, where they're piling on new taxes on the private sector, crushing it there, like this White House is trying to do in this country. Yes, you will get a severe recession if we continue on this road, but we're not going to continue on it. You see it on the state level, states like New Jersey and others, Wisconsin, making changes that would have been inconceivable 2 or 3 years ago. The American people know we cannot continue the road we're on.
Well, I hear you, and I hope you're right, but do you think that the American people are really ready to have a serious discussion and to make the difficult choices that need to be made to put things back in order?
I think you see evidence of it already. And the American people also know you don't have to go through throwing grandma off the cliff to resolve these things. Paul Ryan has come up with a number of ideas over the years where you don't take things away from people now, but you make positive changes for younger people in the future in these entitlement programs. And it is doable. We saw with Ronald Reagan, came in during a severe crisis in the early 80s, made some difficult decisions, but very quickly the American economy came roaring back and we became the leader of the world again.
Steve, it's good to have you on the program. Thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Steve Forbes, chairman of the Forbes Media Empire. His new book's called Freedom Manifesto.